мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
We are under attack. It is an attack against Western democracies and on the institutions that bind them.
What Russia's much more interested in doing is depicting the West as a failure.
The regime and President Yanukovych, they were trying to protect their enormous wealth.
This is Kremlin File. Welcome, everybody, and you are listening and watching to the Kremlin Files Week in Review, and I am so happy to see my friend, my partner in crime.
Partner in coffee crime.
Crime. Exactly.
Yeah, we drink lots of coffee.
We do. Now, let's get started because we're hopping around. Everybody, hold on to your seats because we're going to be going all over the place. This week's review is chock full of news. First of all, historic, welcome Sweden to NATO. Okay, so hey, we're all
welcome.
Welcome. The more the merrier.
Exactly. No, this is an amazing move, and I'm so happy to see Finland and now Sweden in, and I can't wait for Ukraine to eventually get to NATO. Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
The next important and cryptic news is the US and UK announced and warned their citizens of a possible terrorist attack in Moscow within the coming days. And then this morning, Latvia has gone further and also warned of a terrorist attack in Russia. And then right after that, Australia, Estonia, Sweden, Canada, South Korea have issued similar advisories to their citizens in Russia. So something's brewing in Moscow that they clearly are all concerned about. So if you are a citizen of any of these countries, you shouldn't be there to begin with. But if you are, stay away from big public gatherings.
That's it. Pack up and leave. Okay, come home. That's what we say. Now, okay, also fantastic news. We're going to bounce back into Europe, and Czech President Pavel has said that he has finally found all of the funds that were necessary that he was collecting from different countries to purchase 800,000 artillery shells for the Ukrainian armed forces. The first shipments should be coming out, in the next few weeks. And the latest member who has joined this coalition is Luxembourg. That was just announced today. Back to you.
Amazing.
I know, great.
Thank you so much, Czechia. And, we greatly appreciate finally Europe seeing the urgency of what's happening on the front lines.
Exactly.
In more Soviet news, Rupert Murdoch, who is the founder of Fox News, has announced his engagement to Elena Zukova, who used to be Roman Abramovich's mother-in-law. And she, all I have to say is welcome, Rupert, to the FSB mafia family.
There you go.
And for Americans, this is just more worrying signs that Fox News, Wall Street Journal, and any other media outlet under Murdoch is going to basically become like the Soviet Pravda.
Yes, essentially, yes. That's it. Okay. So let's get back to Ukraine and some great news on the front. Ukraine has sunk a Russian warship. That was at the
another one.
Great, exactly. And this is a further blow to Moscow's naval power, which we've been following because it's important that they gain complete control over the Black Sea. So the ship itself was a Sergei Kotov, and the Russians now, this is day 3 that they haven't actually flown into, the Black Sea, which is great news. Also, Ukrainian air defense has down 13 Russian aircraft in 13 days. So we're very, very pleased about that. Very, very pleased.
Yes, and it just shows you the determination of Ukrainians. I mean, this is a country who doesn't even have, a navy. And here you have them sinking, not only sinking ship after ship, but also they've managed to, push back Russia out of the Black Sea,
That's
who
right.
pretty much thought it was their own lake.
That's right. That's right.
Moving on. So there was a story this week, very interesting, espionage, spies, and more spies. That Russian intelligence is using a Serbian agent to infiltrate EU institutions and spread pro-Kremlin talking points about Russia's illegal aggression in Ukraine. This came from a Western intelligence briefing.
Okay. All right. Actually, also to do, okay, with espionage and all of that. There's a lot of espionage stories this week. I'm sure a lot of you have been following the leaked audio, okay, from it was German authorities that were speaking, military that were speaking, and it was released actually by the Russians. We don't know all of the details. I mean, there's a lot published. Olga and I were talking about this before, so we don't want to, let's say, hypothesize at this point of what it can be, so on and so forth. But I'll just tell you some of the reactions that have come out. We've seen, for example, the Russians losing it, so they're using it, obviously, for propaganda purposes. Boris Pistorius dismissed these Russian reactions, saying that they're completely absurd, accusing Moscow of wanting to sow distrust and discord, okay, in Germany. Kirby reported that the leaked conversations between the German Air Force officers is ridiculous and obviously an attempt by the Russians to sow discord among, okay, the allies, and to try to create an impression that the West is not united. Okay, the Defense Ministry itself has confirmed, this interception, so it actually did happen. We know that it happened because one of the people had joined with an insecure, phone line. So that's,
From
let's say,
Singapore.
the basics from Singapore. So these are the basics. We'll be keeping an eye on this to see what else develops on it. Okay, back to you.
Staying on Spy Watch, Western officials, which is interesting because I literally was warning in real time when this was happening. So Western officials have warned that Putin intentionally left the border open for all the Russians, close to 1 million, who fled mobilization so he could send out Russian intelligence agencies and replenish the intelligence operatives that were expelled across Europe. Over the past few years, we have seen country after country expelling diplomats and other Russian agents. And now, apparently, the problem in Europe is even worse than before because now you have all these Russian agents who mixed in with, the Russians fleeing and now have situated themselves across Europe, I'm sure in the United States and so forth.
Yeah, please check our show notes because I found an article, on what Olga has just talked about. And speaking of Russian agents, there's that story of David Slater, the former U.S. Air Force employee who has been charged with sharing classified information about the war, in Ukraine on a foreign dating website, with his, I don't know what you would call her. And he's pleaded not guilty, in a court in Omaha. But, he was sending out all of these messages to what he thought was a Ukrainian sweetheart. Instead, Olga, who was she? Do we know who she was?
Oh, she was a Russian spy. And frankly, this is really getting exhausting. And I don't understand what is so difficult to understand. If you have access to classified information, you are supposed to keep it classified. You should not share these secrets. And we're seeing case after case, of Americans who are sharing the secrets, selling the secrets. And I mean, this, we really need to get control over this because, I mean, this comes on the heels of
Jack Tetseras, right?
Yes.
Or I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yep. who just was sentenced to 16 years for sharing America's classified intelligence on Discord. I mean, this we need to get a hold of this because
we also have to
it,
get Agent Orange on this one, okay, as well. All right, with the classified documents. We'll be waiting for that trial, right?
I
To
can't wait.
begin. I know, neither can I.
Hopefully
Yeah,
soon, one
yeah,
day.
yeah. And let's say the last thing from Europe, really, that I wanted to bring up is Macron, who is causing a stir. I don't know what they've put in his café au lait, but I hope it continues because, sometimes he's a bit, unreliable. Well, not unreliable, but, he'll bounce around, right? With his statements. We
There's
know that before
there's
the
a
war.
saying. There's a saying in Russian, like 7 Fridays in one day.
There you go. I like that one. Basically, he took, okay, a very, very strong stand. Okay, he's come out, with the pistols, okay, in the air. He's produced maps, actually. He was talking to the French Parliament, produced maps of a possible Russian breakthrough towards Kyiv and Odessa, which would oblige the West to act to prevent a Russian victory in Ukraine. In talks with French opposition leaders, Macron said that there would be no more red lines on French involvement, okay, in the conflict, and that he wants to send, he's asking Parliament and also the other parties if there could be a possibility of sending French troops, okay, in different positions, not in forward combat positions, obviously. These would be non-combat positions. But there's some people that are saying, well, there's an election in June, so he's using this a little bit, okay, or outing some other, like Marine Le Pen and other, okay, French politicians who have taken, let's say, very pro-Russian position. So
last time around, she was funded by a Russian oligarch, who basically he's the oligarch, Orthodox king. He's named Konstantin Malofeyev, who is sanctioned. So she was funded by him. So I would not be surprised of her, yet again siding with Russia after collecting money from Russia.
Exactly. And one last thing about Macron, he was in Moldova yesterday, and they signed, a security agreement. So, I mean, he's moving forward. Let's see what happens, okay, with that, because Germany is a bit is a bit frozen right now in terms. Scholz is Scholzing. So we'll see what develops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, back to you.
Speaking of Moldova, I actually just wrote an article for Novaya Gazeta about the situation in Moldova and the pro-Russian, whatever you want to call it, government, I guess, in occupied Transnistria appealing to Moscow for help. So I'll include that in the show notes as well, because it has kind of a historical context of what is happening in Moldova, over the past several years. Now, getting onto Russia's imperialist ambitions, Medvedev, who's the former prime minister and president, who was sold to the West as a reformer, was standing in front of a map, basically showing Ukraine doesn't exist anymore. And while he was standing there and saying this, his exact quotes were, one of Ukraine's former leaders said at some point that Ukraine is not Russia. That concept needs to disappear forever. Ukraine is definitely Russia. And he said this to an audience who was applauding loudly. So now, this, I'd like to send this to all the Western shills who have been peddling negotiations to, get their idea of how you could possibly negotiate with a country who has made it very clear over the past decades that they want Ukraine, because that doesn't exist, Moldova, and frankly, any other country that was held hostage under the Soviet Union. So
that's right. That's right.
Shows you Russia's thirst for imperialism, bloody
Exactly.
thirst for.
Yep, that apparently Elon Musk doesn't understand too much. Speaking of negotiations and who speaks of negotiations, I was very happy to read that the US Congress has launched an investigation into the appearance of Elon Musk's satellite communications with Russian troops in Ukraine. Okay, so this is extremely important because it means accountability, but we know that he is receiving, if I'm not mistaken, also no funding for all right these things exactly. So having those satellites, that the Russians are using is absolutely absurd. We also know that Musk met with, I believe, with Trump, if I'm not mistaken, this past week. And also Viktor Orban, okay, met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago as well. Do you have anything to add about this Starlink thing?
Well, yeah, I hope the Department of Justice is opening an investigation into this because this is a clear violation of sanctions.
Yep.
And I mean, frankly, every single violator should be investigated and, if enough evidence, prosecuted. And at the same time, I really hope that the United States, re-examines all the contracts that they have issued to, Musk and his companies. So definitely a lot on that front and something to keep an eye on. And as far as with Orban, at what point does this become a violation of the Logan Act? Because Trump as a candidate is basically, has a shadow-like government and is carrying out shadow policies behind the scenes of a sitting US president and disrupting his foreign policy. So, I mean, this is something that also needs to, be addressed.
Definitely.
Speaking of Biden, he gave the State of the Union, and for everyone who's crying that he's old and about to keel over, that was one of the furious speeches I have seen. He covered all the important points, and of course, I am very grateful that he started with Ukraine. Well, he started with the Nazis, and then basically said we are now seeing the same, faced with the same challenges, both. Now it's domestic and abroad. But one of my favorite quotes was his message to Putin. Biden said, quote, "My message to President Putin is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down."
Yeah.
And this adds more pressure to Congress, as in an unprecedented move. You have European allies who are, pressuring Congress to pass this very desperately needed critical aid and weapons package that they've been holding up since October.
Yes, exactly. Just to add to, to wrap up a little bit of what you were saying about, the aid package, the United States is also pressuring Europe on the other side to use the funds, the frozen, Russian funds. As we know, there are hundreds of billions that they could, unfreeze. So I think on both sides of the Atlantic, they're trying to get to some sort of an agreement, on how to go forward. But that was just to prop that up.
And to add to what you're saying, Switzerland actually yesterday, I believe, approved the measure to take frozen assets and move forward, pave the way for moving into Ukraine for reconstruction.
That's right.
So I mean,
things are moving.
Slowly, but
that's right. David Cameron in the UK is almost ready to. He's going to be asking Parliament to secure a loan against those frozen assets. So this is also another measure that could be taken. So we'll be looking at that as well and seeing if that goes forward, as an idea.
And since we're here with this, Biden also, not him personally, but there were reports that Biden is considering the Pentagon using their stockpiles as a short-term measure to send weapons to Ukraine until Congress gets their shit together.
That's right.
So,
That's right. Yeah. So a story that just came out, I don't know a lot about it, Olga, so you're going to have to top it up a little bit, okay, for our listeners. Russian hackers have gained access, okay, to Microsoft's core software systems. I don't know if it's the first time. There have been other, hacking that has gone on. We know this. What do you have anything to add about this very quickly? The story is developing.
only that, Russia's hackers continue to find ways to exploit our systems. And I mean, we had the, infamous SolarWinds breach that pretty much breached our government agencies and infrastructure. So we have done a much better job of securing and tightening up, but we still have a lot of work to do. And then with that, the only thing I will add is that there have been advisories in the United States with
Yes.
China, who is also, tapped into our infrastructure and whatnot. So we
Exactly.
have a lot of work to do on that front. But with any Russian hacking happening prior to the 2024 elections, this is dangerous. So
Extremely, extremely. On the Ukrainian side, though, they've had some success against the Russian Ministry of Defense. The HUR announced that they managed to hack those servers and gained access to secret documents that were, now all of the documents, no, but they have screenshots, and we were following this in the beginning of the week. So that's great.
yeah, Ukraine's military intelligence has done an excellent job, and HUR has continuously showed how valuable it is of not only stopping Russian cyber attacks in Ukraine, but also taking the fight to Russia's front by accessing various government systems.
Yeah.
So
What a lot of people don't know about Ukraine as well is that it is a major IT hub. Okay. And I think this week as well, just to add just a little bit, they are now having discussions and for agreements with Estonia, which is another powerhouse, IT powerhouse. Estonia and Luxembourg. There's a reason for Luxembourg, but we'll keep it quiet for the time being. But anyway, with those two, that's come out, okay, as well.
amazing.
Mhm.
And to finally end this week's weekend review, there is more Kremlin intrigue. So an article came out, leaked, quote unquote, that Putin, after his theatrical performance of, staying in power, which is, I think, happening March 15th through 17th, Putin is considering at least one high-profile resignation at top of the country's largest oil and gas companies. The two names that were floated were Alexei Miller from Gazprom and Igor Sechin. Interestingly, with Igor Sechin, a few weeks ago, it was just reported that his son at 35, who had a very high position in Rosneft, was dead. Officially by Russian news, you would never know he's dead. They still keep it a secret.
Yeah.
But someone managed to check the inheritance. Well, someone was tipped off to check the inheritance registry and saw that his son did indeed die February 5th. So now we're way over a month, and there's still no news of it. But it is interesting that first he, loses his son, and now there's rumors that he might lose his job, and Rosneft is the most powerful
That's
company
huge,
in
though,
Russia.
isn't it, Olga? I mean, Igor Sechin, this is like really big. When I saw it, I said, what is happening exactly? Because, right?
Well, for me, I'm sitting waiting to pull out the popcorn and wait for the 90s to come back on steroids and see explosions and
We're
the
waiting.
mafia taking itself out. And I'm sure that we will be headed towards this path. But all joking aside, it's definitely an interesting data point to keep an eye
That's
on
right.
of
That's right.
the internal inner circle struggles. And just to be clear, Putin has always done this. I mean, he's always pinned his oligarchs against each other as policy, but to do it right now in the midst of, Russia is struggling in their economy, despite them, trying to sell that sanctions have no effect. And between everything that's happening inside, I mean, right now would not be the time for this, and something to keep monitoring.
Always, they're keeping us, okay, everyone is really keeping us, okay, hopping the whole week long. And so that wraps up. Okay, this was this week in review. Please, everybody, remember that on Monday, as a special episode, we're going to be, okay, releasing a new Kremlin File episode. And so look out for it. Release on Monday, and then again, okay, another one on Thursday. So check the show notes, right, Olga? We're going to be attaching stories to whatever we talked about, okay, in this episode. And that's it. That's me saying bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. See
Bye.
you next week.
Hi, everybody. If you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to help us out with our independent work, please subscribe to Kremlin File on Substack and on our YouTube channel. Kremlin File is hosted by Olga Lautman and me, Monique Camara. Our production team is headed by Maddie Kaparov, and the theme music by Oreste Camarra. So please don't forget to visit our Kremlin File Substack for links to our socials and to wherever you'd like to listen to podcasts.